all you literary legends and luminaries. Today's episode of Booksmart is David Sedaris' Dress Your Family in Corduroy and Denim. I picked up several of Sedaris' books in the past, but always found something more intriguing to read, so I always put it down. I decided to give one a shot. I have mixed feelings about it. First of all, bookstores, whether they're used or new, categorize books in ways that don't always make sense. This one was in the humor section. I don't normally dig through this section because sometimes funny books get old. I've read several books that are personal essays that are funny, but they aren't housed in the humor section. These funny books grow obnoxious. You want me to believe that first your car broke down, then you tripped in front of someone you're obsessed with, then you had an outrageous encounter with someone at a coffee shop, your heel broke, and then a dead squirrel falls from the sky on top of your head. That's what those books begin to read like. It's too much, and it doesn't even seem the least bit authentic. Maybe all those things did happen, but not all on the same day. I like veracity more than excitement. But that's why I debate buying a book from the humor section of a bookstore or even picking one up that isn't in that section that has some sort of hilarious comment on the front. The good news, this book wasn't like that. The bad news, I didn't think it was all that funny. All the raving about David Sedaris I didn't quite get. And maybe this book isn't one of the better ones. He's written a ton based on my internet research. Dress Your Family in Corduroy and Denim was just so-so. What I thought he did beautifully. There's an essay called A Can of Worms. He's sitting at a diner eating, and nothing happens at all, yet he makes some remarkable observations as he eavesdrops on other diners since the people who he's eating with are boring him. He wonders if worms from space and the Akita from the O.J. Simpson case could talk. They would have the answers to what happened. Those are the kinds of essays I like. Kind of like the Seinfeld type where nothing much happens, yet you wish you could capture monotonous activity on paper and turn it into something profound. Let me read you a little part of that essay as he is sitting there. As Anne and Hugh resumed their conversation, I thought of all the pie I had eaten during the course of my life and wondered how different things might be if only I had wished upon the points. To begin with, I could not be seated at the apple pan. That much was certain. Had I gotten my wish at the age of 8, I would still be rounding up mummies in Egypt, luring them from their tombs and trapping them in heavy iron cages. All subsequent wishes would have been based upon the life I had already established. A new set of boots, a finer whip, greater command of the mummy language. That's the problem with wishes. They ensnare you. In fairy tales, they're nothing but trouble, magnifying the greed and vanity of the person for whom they are granted. One's best bet, and the moral to all those stories, is to be unselfish and make your wish for the benefit of others, trusting that their happiness will make you happy as well. It's a nice idea, but would definitely take some getting used to. All because he's eating with these people, and they're eating cake and pie, and the tip and is a wish and all that kind of stuff. And it's really kind of cool how he puts that all together. Sedaris is compared to Mark Twain. I can see a bit of that coming through in the essays, but I think Twain is a bit more gruff with his observations and aphorisms. Maybe Sedaris is a bit too subtle for my taste, while at the same time seemingly going overboard, if that makes any sense. He's got an essay about Halloween candy that was just so-so, a snow day that seemed a bit exaggerated, a lengthy one about a second house, strip poker that's a bit out there and unsettling, a story about a bully who punched him that was not the least bit funny, a landlord story that could have been funnier, an annoying neighbor girl that had me worried more than laughing, and a creepy cleaning story that was more disturbing than it was funny. He writes about his family and how his family will take it. I wasn't really laughing because it wasn't all that funny. I do appreciate his inner thoughts as he's writing. They are relatable. Even in the most extreme or odd or benign situations, my thoughts run amok too. Some of these he captures well, like this one about a bird as they're listening to the radio. My sister Lisa had an apartment over by the university and said that I could come stay with her as long as I didn't bring my Joni Mitchell record. My mother offered to drive me over, and after a few bong hits, I took her up on it. It was a 15-minute trip across town, and on the way we listened to the rebroadcast of a radio call-in show in which people phoned the host to describe the various birds gathered around their backyard feeders. Normally the show came on in the morning, and it seemed strange to listen to it at night. The birds in question had gone to bed hours ago and probably had no idea they were still being talked about. I chewed this over and wondered if anyone back at the house was talking about me. To the best of my knowledge, no one had ever tried to imitate my voice or describe the shape of my head, and it was depressing that I went unnoticed while a great many people seemed willing to drop everything for a cardinal. But the one about Anne Frank's house just seemed a little off, like he was trying too hard to be funny. Anne Frank doesn't really invoke humor, yet he was trying to think funny while visiting her house. It seemed forced and, well, just ignorantly stupid. However, when he lets a complete stranger into his house and sees it from the stranger's perspective, which is that Sedaris could easily be a serial killer, that was unique since I was thinking Sedaris was crazy for letting a stranger inside his house because the stranger could be the serial killer. And then he has an essay called The Chicken in the Hen House, which was oddly suspenseful. Sedaris is at a hotel and in the elevator with a guy and a young boy, and Sedaris is holding 2 coffee cups. I had no idea where it was going, and there's a slight twist at the end that was surprising and clever. But then there's the whole question of how much of the essays that are in this book or any of his books are actually true. While Sedaris admits to exaggerating, some meticulous researchers have found that some of his essays are completely made up. Not that that puts Sedaris in the category of James Fry, but when we talk about humor, part of the funniness is because it's labeled nonfiction. If this was fiction, no one would read it because it's not fiction funny. And that is perhaps the debate. It's labeled as nonfiction, but only portions of it are true. His own family apparently is irritated with the liberties he takes in describing them, not because it's his perception of them, it's that he completely makes stuff up. And you know me, truth is always stranger than fiction, so maybe there's no need to make up stories. If so, make a fictional book of essays. The nonfiction debate lessens my overall thoughts of the book. If I found another one of his books at the used bookstore, I would only give it a shot if I didn't find anything else of interest, but I don't think I will seek out another one of his books. It was a lighthearted read that was relatively pleasing, but I don't think I would have wanted to pay full price for the book. With all the rave reviews about him, I guess I was expecting more. Since this is one of his later books, maybe he's run out of material. I read a Jenny Lawson book that was the same way. As established authors who make the best-selling list, the essays had me thinking, and this is all you got? This isn't that great, but you needed to fill another book so that loyal fans will buy it. I might have thought differently of Dress Your Family in Corduroy had Sedaris been an unknown. It's funny, but not snorting funny. There are little specks of truth and deep thoughts peppered here and there, but there just wasn't enough of them to have me rave over David Sedaris. Sedaris is even in my city with a show in about a month from now as I write this episode. I thought about buying tickets before I read it as there were only a few seats left. I'm glad I didn't buy the tickets based on this book. It wasn't a book I wish I hadn't wasted my time reading. It just wasn't a book that I would take much with me now that I'm done reading it. The fact that I don't have much to say about it is in itself significant. I had to think for a while to even get this much. But that's maybe not Sedaris' fault. Sometimes the hype sets up for a bigger letdown, and then it's an irritating letdown because lesser-known works that are actually better and funnier and more profound don't get much attention because those authors don't have connections to the right people to popularize it. Maybe that's what bothers me. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How funny do you think David Sedaris is? And does it matter if what he writes isn't all true? Thanks for watching. As always, my goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.